program started, and this is, I want to say thank you. You have a picture of me as Tobias. Thank you for joining us today at Mount Vernon. My name is Tobias Lear. I've been in the Age of His Excellency George Washington for many years. Today is December 13th, 1779. General Washington is not well, and he is summoning you here today to share his life story with you. His Excellency will see you shortly. His Excellency, your guests have arrived.
Tobias, thank you. And you've been a loyal aide for years. You've been for 13 years. Your wife was too. Unfortunately, you married a relative of mine, two of them, and they both passed away. But there's a picture of you. Okay. So, yeah, you can definitely see Tobias the resemblance. Okay, so the guests are here. I'm so sorry. Hey, Tobias, let me ask one thing. If you have your pocket watch with you, could you tell me when 25 minutes are up? Because I have Thomas Jefferson is coming in, and we have not been getting along very well. Not very happy with him right now. Excuse me, folks. So while we're getting ready, thank you for being here. How was your trip to Mount Vernon? Okay, long, yes, I know. In December, it's tough. Are you? What state are you all from?
New Jersey.
Oh, you all came up from New Jersey. Okay. You know, interestingly, Benjamin Franklin, who I obviously knew quite well, he was very condescending to New Jersey. He said about your state, it was like a keg of beer tapped at both ends, meaning in between New York and Philadelphia, it had no value. But ironically, his illegitimate son became the last royal governor of New Jersey. If there weren't women amongst us, I would tell you what Benjamin would refer to him, but I cannot do that right now. Okay, so in any case, the reason I have summoned you here, my health is deteriorating. It's 1799. Many of my family members died young. I was hoping to make it to the year 1800. Unfortunately, I don't think I will. So I want to share my life story and my legacy a little bit with you. And by the way, I spent my most time of any state during the Revolutionary War in New Jersey. And I think it's so underrated because your state had more battle/skirmishes than any of the original 13 states. Okay, so I think it's wonderful to have all you New Jersey visitors here. Did you know any of my friends, any of you from the Patterson family, the Stockton family, maybe the Livingston family, the Brearley family? No, not at all. The Magnum family. Okay. All right. So, but thank you so much for being here. A little bit about my background. I was born in 1732 in Fairfax, Virginia. Middle class, agrarian background. Unfortunately, my dad died when I was 12 years old. So we did not have a lot of money. I would have loved to, I was thinking of a career of going into the military, but with the British military at that time, and I never thought this was fair because we were British citizens, but yet the highest rank I would be able to obtain in the British Army would be a captain. Okay, and I was basically raised by my brother Lawrence, who unfortunately, he'll die a short time later of the dreaded smallpox. In fact, the only time I ever left the 13 colonies or 13 states was we went to Barbados together, thought Lawrence's health would improve. He passes away, and that's when I inherit Mount Vernon. Okay, so there was not many opportunities for schooling or the military for me. So does anybody know what career I took on?
Survey.
I became very good, sir. Okay, I knew New Jersey people were a cut above. Okay, yes, I became a surveyor, and that generated early in my life a inculcated value for gaining Western land. I worked for one of the wealthiest families in Virginia, Fairfax. Okay, now, we're going to the next one. So I inherited Mount Vernon from my brother Lawrence. We kept adding on to it as we gained more wealth. Okay, now, one of the reasons I want you here today, I invite you here today, a lot of times I'm perceived as some kind of Greek or Roman god. I think it's much more fascinating if you see me as a flesh and blood human. I had a very bad temper that I had to control my entire life, which I think makes me the greater person. Okay, I'm not keen of portrayals as myself as that. So you've all heard certain stories about me. I cannot tell a lie. Nay. Okay, that story never came out. In fact, it was written in the 1830s by somebody by the name of Mason Weems, otherwise known as Parson Weems, who was trying to inculcate into the United States American values. Okay, you heard that I threw a silver dollar across the Potomac? How many of you visited my state there? My state.
Did you skim it?
Yes, yes. No way in the world. Although, I have to tell you, sir, I was exceedingly strong. I was 6'4", 6'2", broad shoulders. Even Jefferson said of me, I was the best horseback rider in Virginia that he knew of. But no, nay, I did not do that. Okay, next one. Okay, my famous, infamous teeth. What have you heard my teeth are made out of?
Wood.
Nay, does anybody know what they're actually made out of? Ivory, and the books would not print this, believe it or not, and you can look this up. They extracted, excuse me?
Teeth from slaves.
Yes, excellent. They extracted teeth from slaves. Now, I compensated them, but it wasn't a volunteer operation. Okay, so I did not have wooden teeth, although my teeth never ever fit properly. I was chronically in pain. Yes, go ahead. Okay, so that is Mason Weems, who we talked about. Go ahead. Okay, my beloved brother Lawrence, and I had a number of, after my biological mom died, my dad remarried. In fact, his new wife lived long enough to see me become president of the United States. I had a number of stepbrothers, stepsisters, etc. Go ahead. Okay, I married, now some people feel I married to gain wealth. I married Martha Custis. Was I concerned about wealth? Yes, I was concerned about wealth and status. But I truly loved her. She was a widow, one of the wealthiest people in Virginia, and I never had any biological children. I inherited 2 children from her who I treated as my beloved own children. One was Patsy. Alas, she died of age 13. She died in my arms. Martha wore black for an entire year, never really got over it. My son James, if any of you have sent children away to colleges that you get in a little bit of trouble, okay, James got in a lot of trouble. He turned his life around. He was at Yorktown with me in 1781, and James died there. Okay, but I was blessed with grandchildren from James and an extended family who lived with me at Mount Vernon. Go ahead. Okay, Mom. Here's Mom. Okay. All right, now, I want to address this issue. I was a major slaveholder. Even though myself, Jefferson, we all knew that slavery was inherently wrong. In fact, Thomas Jefferson said, slavery is like holding a wolf by the ears. You can't hold that wolf forever, but you can't let that wolf go. Proudly, I was the only one of the wealthy Virginians who freed my slaves upon my death. And I even gave them money. Now, I had hundreds of slaves over the years. I was no saint. I expected them to work exceedingly hard. If they would not work hard, we had no problem having the caretaker take a whip or whatever to them. They would be punished. But one thing Martha and I never did, we never sold off any of our slaves to, quote, the Deep South to break up our family. This woman broke my heart. Her name is Ona Judge. Ona Judge was exceedingly close to Martha. She was a house slave. We took her to Philadelphia with us. Now, Philadelphia had a rule that if you were a slave in Philadelphia for more than 6 months, you would be liberated, you would be emancipated. So what do you think we did with Ona? New Jersey was one of the last states to liberate their slaves, in any case, in the North, anyway. Okay, no. We would, after close to 6 months, we would send her back to Mount Vernon, so she never gained her freedom. She ran away from us, and I was not a saint. I was concerned about pecuniary things, about social status and wealth. We hired slave catchers to return her. We offered a reward. We never understood why she left. We considered her family. She became free in Massachusetts. We never got her back. Go ahead. We had another slave known as Hercules. And Hercules was my favorite cook, as well as his son. Every morning he would make for me my beloved Johnny cakes. Okay, so in any case, Hercules and his son ran off. We never got them back either. Okay, so a little bit about how I became involved in the military. After my brother died, I became the leader of the Virginia Colonial Militia, an all-volunteer outfit. Again, we're under the British still, and I had no military experience. Okay, so 1753, 1754, a war breaks out. The first major war in North America, the French and Indian War. I was told to go out west, which at the time would have been Ohio and Pennsylvania, and tell the French, this is our land. Well, I'm out there with a group of native Indians and militiamen, and French soldiers come upon us, somewhere in the 20s. Well, this is horrible. I could not control the native Indians. They massacred the French soldiers. Unbeknownst to me, the French soldiers had with them, the commander of the French, had with them a document asking for a peace process. I get back to Williamsburg, Virginia, thinking I'm going to be defamed, cached out of the military. Lo and behold, they make me into a hero. Okay? So now, they send me out to the west again. And I established this fort called Fort Necessity in Pennsylvania. We wanted to get the French out of the area known as Duquesne by the Ohio Allegheny rivers, Montague rivers, the confluence of them. I had no military experience to speak of. I built my fort in the lowland, which is a military mistake. I get captured. True story. The officer who captured me was the brother of the officer we massacred a year earlier. I thought my life was over. They pardoned me. I will only say it's an act of providence. After that, the British realized that the West has a substantial amount of value, and under William Pitt, they decide we're going to really strengthen our military in the West. So they bring in this general who'd been fighting for many years. He was in his 50s, General Edward Braddock. I joined his campaign to go out west, but again, I can't be the high-ranking officer. And part of me that becomes turned against the British is my men and myself from the colonial militia was treated in a horrific, condescending manner. Braddock was extremely, for lack of a better word, arrogant. He thought he could march right into the Ohio River, area in columns of fours. We're attacked by native Indians and the French. We are massacred. Most of the cadre, the officers, are killed. I take command and lead the retreat. By the way, I had 2 horses shot from under me, and I had a bullet go through each side of my coat. What saved me? It had to be providence in my mind, an act of God. Okay, Braddock, our troops were massacred so bad we never knew. We buried Braddock hastily. We don't even know where the grave is. We buried him by a roadside. But it was a horrible defeat for the British at that time. Okay, the war wages on till 1763. The war ends. When that takes place, the French lose the war. The major last battle is the Battle of Quebec. We get a lot of territory, that sort of thing. But the results of the French and Indian War, the Revolution is somewhat a continuation of the French and Indian War. The British say the war emanated out of the 13 colonies. We have to provide troops to protect you. So they decide they are going to tax us. Now, all the way going back to the French Magna Carta of 1215, Parliament has the right to tax, but only if you're represented. We had no members of Parliament, so we feel we're being taxed unjustly. Okay, and I was a big advocate, as a big landholder, of these problems with the British. The colony that becomes the most radical, as you probably know, is Massachusetts. We don't have to get much into time right now, but the British passed a Stamp Act where every document, including legal documents, and you don't want to get the lawyers mad at you, legal documents, playing cards, newspapers are taxed. They start tarring and feathering tax collectors. Then it reaches in 1773. They decide they're going to create a monopoly on tea from the East India Tea Company. You can't import any other tea but from them. That will lead to the Boston Tea Party. We have the Boston Massacre, which shots are exchanged. Things become more and more radicalized. Now, the British decide they're going to pass what's called the Intolerable Acts and cut off the head of this revolt in Massachusetts from the rest of the colonies. It backfires. What happens is we are all sympathetic to Massachusetts. For the first time, we start looking at ourselves as Americans to a degree, not just Massachusetts men, not just Virginia men. And tons of support goes up to Massachusetts. Well, that will lead to, okay. Oh, that's the death of Braddock, I'm sorry. Okay, Washington's not that great at technology. Stamp Act, Boston Massacre, where they, Tea Party, where they dress as Indians. Go ahead. Okay, so that will lead for a call for the First Continental Congress, which takes place in Philadelphia. And at that time, we're not calling for independence. We extend what's called the olive branch, but to King George III, we want certain rights. He says we are an open rebellion. That will lead to the Second Continental Congress, which is going to take place in what we now call Independence Hall. It was the Pennsylvania State House. And at that time, we decide we are going to form an army. Now, the question becomes, who is going to lead this Continental Army? We have militias, but not a united army. Well, John Hancock is presiding over the Second Continental Congress. And he gives this glorious speech about who's going to command the troops. Well, a gentleman by the name of John Adams stands up. No, it wasn't John Adams. Now, I like to believe I'm pretty modest, but every single day I wore my uniform to the Second Continental Congress. Okay? They select me for two reasons. I have military experience, and this rebellion is not going to work without the large, prosperous state of Massachusetts. Okay. All right, so. Okay, we'll go up. Okay. So, I take command. The first place they assign me is Boston. When I get up there, I wrote letters to family members and other people saying, this rebellion is not going to work. They said, well, you know, we're going to have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, we have to do something. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And they said, well, you know, The troops are dirty, they're malnutritious, they know nothing about sanitary habits, about latrines. I get up there, and when I get up there, there is a major brawl between the men from Virginia and the men from Massachusetts. Hundreds of men fighting. And I wrote to my brothers and other people, what am I getting myself into? Okay, go ahead. Okay, so, this is a little out of context, but, okay, so, in any case, I have a slave who traveled with me. I looked at him as a servant named Billy Lee. He was with me the entire time of the American Revolution. And Billy and I went by horse, and we went in between the Virginia men and the Massachusetts men, and they realized this is His Excellency General Washington, and we start pulling them apart. Okay, so now we're in Boston, and the British are in Boston. Man, I had, if you go back the gentleman to the right was a commander of our artillery, and he took artillery 180 miles by sled from Fort Ticonderoga, okay, to the Heights, Dorchester Heights in Boston. And by the way, how much artillery experience do you think my friend has here? None. Anybody know his name? Henry Knox. He was a 280-pound bookseller who read about artillery and became very important in the military. Go on, I'm sorry. Okay, so now the British decide when the artillery goes up there, they're going to leave Boston, and they go to reform, and they go to Halifax, Nova Scotia. So word gets out, the next place the British will probably attack is going to be New York. New York would be impossible for me to hold with about 13,000 soldiers because there's so many different possible waterways. The British had roughly about 25,000 men. It was the largest armada to date. We can't hold it. They land in Staten Island. We get defeated in White Plains. We get defeated in Long Island, the Battle of Harlem Heights. And by the way, I want to point out one thing prior to this. Who do you think that's a statue of?
King George.
That is King George. And that would be in Bowling Green, New York, which is in the Lower East Side. It's a park now. What do you think they used when they took that statue down? What do you think they made it into? Yeah, they made it into bullets. They delivered me as a gift King George's head. Okay, wasn't a practical gift. So, in any case, we're constantly losing. We have to surrender about 2,000 men at Harlem Heights. During the night, we light our campfires. We decide we're going to retreat across the Hudson River. And we come into New Jersey. And we land up in what's now known as Fort Lee, New Jersey. It's changed a little bit demographically, and it's named after Charles Lee, who I'll talk about later. He was a scoundrel, but he was actually from Britain. I'm not very fond of him. He'll come up in a little bit. So we retreat. We're chased through New Jersey. The British land up by the Palisades. That we have a holding engagement up in Hackensack, a small battle there. We proceed across the Delaware. Go ahead. Okay, so now, think about this. I have never won a battle in my life. They're calling to replace me. My one-loss record is not very sustainable. We need a victory. Christmas Day, we decide to go across the Delaware River, which there's a chain of British fortifications, many of them held by Hessians, German mercenaries. We come across during a blizzard. Now, many people say, and this troubles me, that the Hessians were not prepared, that they had been partying on Christmas Eve. The Hessians had guards posted, but it was literally during a blizzard. I divided my troops into third. Only one of our third was able to come across the Delaware. By the way, there's a future president of the United States in that boat with me? Anybody know who it is? You guys are good. Yeah, that would be James Monroe. And the only reason we made it across was we had the benefit of having the hardy Marblehead fishermen alongside us. So we come across, the leader of the Hessians is a Colonel Rahl. He dies. I tried to treat him before he died. We take about 800 prisoners. That is our first victory. Not a major strategic victory, but it's a morale-boosting victory. We retreat back across the Delaware, and I think this is very underrated in history. The British, out of what's now Lawrenceville, New Jersey, attack. We meet them at the Aspic Bridge in Trenton, and we engage them in 2 battles. Okay? So, we defeat them. They start retreating. Go ahead. And we chase them across into Princeton. And by the way, Lawrenceville at the time, I knew it as Moorhood. Okay? We engage them in a battle at Princeton, which is reenacted every year. We fight to an equal ability with the British. But very sad for me, one of my key adjuncts, who I actually rented land to, who owned an apothecary in Fredericksburg, he was bayoneted 9 times and dies days later. You might know, if you're all from New Jersey, who that is.
Hugh Mercer.
Brilliant, Hugh Mercer, yes. That was very difficult on me. They bayoneted him while he was on the ground. That house he died in, I'm jumping out of character for a moment, you could still visit that house. Okay, go ahead, please. Okay, now, we will retreat, as you know, to Valley Forge. I have an army of about 12,000 men there. We lose approximately 2,000 men. Men are deserting every day. We can't get food because the people in that area don't want to accept continental currency. But something very positive happens out of it. We find a phenomenal drill instructor who's Prussian, from Germany. Anybody know who he is? Von Steuben, right. Okay. Well, Von Steuben told us he was a high-ranking officer in the Prussian army. No, he also didn't speak English. But he was a master at drilling our soldiers. But what we would do is, he would translate to a Frenchman. The Frenchman would then translate it into English. But he establishes, more important now in the current military, men look at as marching as a waste of time. Marching and drills, not very conducive to good military. It was so important then to be able to form your troops. He puts in place a manual that was used, a green book that was used by the United States Army, believe it or not, in part till the 1960s. And listening to him every day, that guy could curse up a storm. Fortunately, half of it was in Prussian. But he made us into a modern army. In fact, after the war, we give him a house in Hackensack that was owned by a loyalist by the name of Zabriskie. That house is still there. Next one, please. Okay. We decide we're going to engage the British. And as they're leaving New York, we're going to engage the British. And we engage them in somewhere, it's probably a 2-day ride from here for you. Up in Monmouth County. And you've all heard of the Battle of Monmouth. Okay, and what happens there, because of Steuben's training of our men, we're able to stand up to the most powerful army in the world. But alas, remember I was talking about Charles Lee. I arrived there, Charles Lee is ordering a retreat. I used every profanity in my vocabulary, and again, I'm not going to, ma'am, I'm not going to say it in front of you, okay? And I led the men on to the battlefield. My adjuncts thought I was going to be killed as I charge out there to gather up morale, and I say, come on, boys, this is going to be like a fox hunt. And that is the last major battle in the North. Okay, go ahead. Okay, by the way, I met a woman there. What's her real name?
Mary McCall. Hayes.
Hayes, who knew that? Wow. This is phenomenally easy for old George. Okay. Part of her may not be true, part of her not. But how she gets the name Molly Pitcher, all the women camp followers then were called Molly Pitchers. Okay, so met her there. If you see more modern day pictures of her, she wasn't exactly glamorous looking as she's depicted. Okay, so go on, please. Okay, now, the war is dragging on. We have a major victory in Saratoga under General Nathan Greene and under Benedict Arnold, who was a phenomenal fighting general, albeit morally corrupt. The British decide they're going to become involved in a campaign in the South. Why the South? They think they're going to get tremendous loyalist support. In essence, 1781, it's a civil war going on in the South. A brutal, brutal civil war. Families killing families, etc. The British are forced to retreat. I come in, march down there with French support, and we chase the British to Yorktown, where they think they're going to get resupplied. They build redoubts, which are kind of like foxholes. We do, with the French engineers, a zigzag pattern. We're able to get close to them, and the first redoubt falls to an adjunct I love, somebody by the name of Alexander Hamilton. I love that man so much, I would not be surprised if they write a play about him. Probably would never make it, but... Okay, so... Cornwallis, much to his chagrin, surrenders about 5,000 troops at Yorktown. That's the last major battle of the Revolutionary War. General Cornwallis was so distraught, as the British come out to stack arms, he would not get out of his tent. He sent an adjutant. Without saying a word, when that adjutant approached me with his sword, I just looked to my right, you give the sword to my adjutant. I'm at the same level as any British officer. Okay, now, the war drags on, Peace of Paris, 1783. We are now going to form, we have a new government called the Articles of Confederation. Go on. Okay. I want to say this. I think one of my greatest achievements, while the war is going on, we had no ability to tax. I'm up in Newburgh, New York. We're containing the British Army. And much of my cadre approaches me, and they say, General Washington, we're not getting paid. We want to march to Philadelphia and take over the Congress and proclaim you as a king or an executive ruler. I get a little theatrical. I take out my glasses and I say, men, I've been doing this for 9 years. My hair has turned white, and excuse me, I'm losing my sight. I did not give 9 years of my life to establish a king. I gave 9 years of my life to form a Republican with a small R style government. And you know what, folks? I never, ever took any pay as a military officer. I kept copious records of my expenses and expected to get reimbursed. So, we have this government now, the Articles of Confederation. I'm not going to get into much detail. It deliberately was a very weak central government. In fact, one British ambassador said, if we send one diplomat to the United States, we have to send 13. No ability to regulate trade. Each state is coining money. You needed 9 of the 13 states to approve anything. Very weak executive. But if you wanted to change anything, you needed all 13 to come out to pass an amendment. So now we decide we need a better government. 1787. And one thing, Tobias, around how far am I running?
You're running low.
Am I in overtime?
Yeah, you're running overtime.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm sorry.
All right.
It's very tough to do my life in... Thank you. Okay. So, In Massachusetts, a rebellion takes place by disgruntled farmers who fought in the Revolution. It's called Shays' Rebellion. It was put down, but what happened was we had no strong army to put it down, and they were attacking the armory in Springfield. So the property privileged class, we're afraid we were being ruled under one tyranny of one. Now, my God, we may have tyranny of the majority, mob rule. That calls for a constitutional convention, 1787, in Philadelphia. Now, there's only one person who's thought in the country who has the cachet to bring legitimacy to this constitutional convention. Who do you think that one man might be? George Washington, yes. I reluctantly do it. In fact, they put me in a chair that has an engraving of the sun on it. Benjamin Franklin, who was the oldest delegate there, he could barely walk. He had severe gout. Prisoners would bring old Benjamin in every day. Says, we hope that's going to be a rising sun, not a settling sun. We lock ourselves in Independence Hall. We place guards outside. We close the windows. We didn't want to be influenced by the public. This is from May, a scorching summer, 1787, to September of 1787. We leave there with our new government. When Franklin walks out, a lady says, "Dr. Franklin, what type of government do we now have?" He presently says, "Ma'am, we have a republic, if we could keep it." Okay. I'm almost done. Okay. So now they decide we're going to have a president of the United States. We're going to have an election. We only have an electoral college. The public's not voting. We did not trust you, the masses, at that time. I am the only I didn't want the job, but again, I was the only person they felt that could unite the country. I win with I get every single electoral vote. Only president in history to do that. At that time, the vice president becomes the person who gets the second most votes, John Adams. Okay, I am sworn in New York. The day of my inauguration, I pray at St. Paul's by Trinity Church. My Bible is still at the New York Historical Society. Please. Okay. Constitution provides for me appointing advisors, and I'm almost done. Jefferson, Secretary of State; Hamilton, Secretary of Treasury; my good friend Henry Knox, Secretary of War; Attorney General Edmund Randolph; and John Jay. John Jay will be Chief Justice later of the Supreme Court. Now, the problem is, I don't believe, folks, in political parties. I call them factions. But it's natural that they emerge. One of them would be led by Hamilton, who wants a strong, vigorous national government. Okay, he wants to pay back the debt. Jefferson, his group becomes known as the States Writers, will become known as the Democratic Republicans, not to be confused with the current Republicans. Hamilton is the Federalist. I do not proclaim myself with the political party, although my allegiance is much more for a strong, vigorous government. Okay. Okay, John Adams is my vice president, as we stated. Okay, as I was saying before, I believe my legacy, maybe my greatest legacy, is I want you all to think about something while I'm still alive. I could have become a king. We could have been a minimum of 13 different countries. We could have been like our neighbors to the south. I think of some people have called me the one indispensable man in American history. And I believe that to be true. Okay? So that's what I was talking about up in Newburgh, New York. Go ahead. Okay. Now, it's 1799, December 13th. I went out this morning. I tried to be very punctual for a horseback ride. The weather was horrific about my estate. I came back and I had somebody coming in to see me before you people came in. I didn't change. I got horribly sick with what was called consumption. They call in the best doctors of the land, of Virginia. I'm 69 years old. Take a guess how they decide to treat me. they bleed me and bleed me and bleed me and give me enemas, not to get too graphic. Tobias, you are in the room with me. You're going to be in the room with me, as are some of the slaves and Martha. Finally, I say, 'tis good. And I just died. I will pass away tomorrow, December 14th, 1799. Richard Henry Lee of Virginia, not to be confused with General Charles Lee, says about me, an eulogy, famous eulogy, first in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of our countrymen. They wanted to bury me in a sarcophagus under the Capitol. I wanted to be buried at my beloved Mount Vernon. I didn't want my family to become a dynasty. I divided up my estate amongst 32 family members, including a person who resided there, Bushrod Washington, who became later on a justice of the Supreme Court. My slaves are freed. Martha passes away 2 years later. Her slaves are freed. My friends, that's my legacy, in short. Thank you very much. I think you found a new role as Tobias Lear. You're dead on. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here today with this group. Kat, thank you so much for your help. George is not a tech-savvy person, so thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I went over time.